So we're joined here by two wonderful men who have chosen to make Western Australia their home. And I mean, if we look at this whole series, has been about what migrants have brought to Australia, in particular Western Australia. And these two have brought so much that they're really at the top of their game. They've been able to give up their hearts, their skills, their training, and have definitely made their impact felt on Western Australia. Both are authors, both are chefs, both come from France, of course, and both came here through quite different ways. I think that Emmanuel came for love.
Yep.
Yes, but wanted to be a cartoonist to start off. Cartoons, losses our gain. Alain always knew that he was going to cook from a tiny little boy, following his grandmother around, who wasn't allowed to be a chef, but he was too. So we're going to explore those wonderful stories. And we're going to talk about their process of even deciding of how to come to a place where, I mean, 23 years ago when I came here, there wasn't a Thai restaurant. There was no cafe culture. You couldn't eat outdoors because, my God, you might pick up a germ somewhere along the way. And God knows what you two thought about the produce that was available at the time. So you came here as an adventurous young man, but let's go back a bit further to Alain deciding those moments where you felt those smells. Tell us about the experience with your grandmother, about her food and how it influenced you.
Okay, I come from a worker's family, but being a Catholic environment, you know, we do a lot of things for Easter, for well, every time there is a Catholic saint or something.
There are a lot of saints.
And we have a lot of saints in France, you know. We're having a special dinner, and very often it happened at my grandmother's place. And every time she was doing something very different and very surprising. When I was a kid, my mom was never really interested by cooking. She did it because, well, you had to do it, you know. She was more interested in sewing and that kind of thing. But my grandmother, from my father's side, was really, really exceptional in the kitchen. She had a very tiny kitchen, you know, just a few square meters. But what came out of that kitchen was absolutely sumptuous, very well made. She think, and it's only later on when I become a chef that I could understand her techniques, you know, and say, wow, she, with that knowledge, could do it perfectly. While as we stumble so much, you know, to arrive to a perception. I remember that for my MOF, I had to make, as a dessert, a crème viennoise. It's like a crème viennoise is like a set crème, you know, with eggs and all that. But
like a brulee?
Yeah, but it's done with caramel. And what's important is that first you make the caramel, and of course the caramel is, well, to get that color is about 153 degrees, you know. If you put milk inside of that, it's going to split.
Yes.
It's way too hot. So you have to cool it down enough to be able to put the milk inside so it doesn't split, but at the same time, not too late so the caramel is melted. And then when you cook it, you know, it's very important that there is no air bubble. So you cook it into a bain-marie very slowly. But you see, this, as a professional, is very, very hard to achieve. My grandmother could make that like this. And it's only later, you know, that I understand. I say, how does she make it with no bubble? How does she make it with no bubbles, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just need, you know, for the water to be a little hot, you know.
Oh, yeah, and it's ruined.
And it starts to make bubble. And of course, in a competition like the MOF, if there is one bubble, you're gone, you know.
We're going to come to the MOF soon, which can only be even competed every 4 years. That's how long. You know, I mean, it doesn't happen every year. Every 4 years, Emmanuel is going to be studying, if we're his again, we're going to come to that. I want you to describe the way that the routine and the ritual happened when your grandmother had made pâté and that your father got to open it. I mean,
that's right. Yeah, that's right. My grandmother was always making pâté because, you know, when you're not very wealthy, you offer a little present. And to be able to make a pâté that you cannot buy, it was really important to us, you know. And she was making those pâtés not only with love and care and attention, cook them, preserve them, but always keep them in her cellar for a couple of months before giving it to us. You see, when you make a pâté or a terrine, time is on your side. It's like whiskey or cheese, you know. The longer he's going to take, you know, more flavor will develop.
Oh, like women.
Absolutely, you know. I was getting there.
Yes, you would have been.
and so there's a, when you make a pâté in a terrine, of course, it's a mix of ingredients of meat, of onions, you know, flavors and things like this, of truffles. If you were to just make the pâté and open it and eat it, it'd be pretty average. Wait 2 months, everything changed. Those flavors are there, you know, coming forward. And that's very interesting. And so she knew when to give the pâtés, you know, and when to make it. I remember we were grinding the pâté by hand, you know, and so that was my job, you know, standing on a chair, you know, and just moving the thing, and then learning how to make the pâté, sealing the tin and doing it. And after that, you know, I was doing it at my house, you know, for my dad, you know, and he was so impressed, you know, by that. Was never as good as my grandma's pâté, but still, I was on the way. You know?
He used to just very, very gently take the seal off, and then he would smell it. They would all smell it, and you can imagine the whole family sitting around with big eyes, wondering, and he would declare, his mother's, this is better than the last.
And always it was like this. You see those glass jar where you have to pull the rubber because they're sealed, you know.
Yeah.
And this was the thing, you know. It was like nearly ceremonious, you know. Dad was just putting the rubber, and we were all around, and you could hear the hissing, you know. Then the smell come, and we all waiting, you know, for that slice of pâté to fall into our slice of bread, you know. It was just nice.
Emmanuel, you were the youngest of 8 children.
8 children, yes.
Were you always struggling to get food? Is that why you eventually became a chef?
Well, yes. I mean, I remember when my mom was cooking the chicken, you can imagine there is only a few parts of the chicken, and I loved the breast so much. But with two older brothers and sisters, they all... and
Seagulls.
what I always got left is the little wings. But my dad was on my side, so he always pick up the piece and put it on my plate. So no, it was definitely good because I was very lucky because I was a boy, and I was an accident, of course. I mean, after 8.
You think they'd worked out what caused it?
Yeah, well, my dad told me we didn't want to have another kid, but you came along, and he said, "Create your little boy." So he was very happy with that. So I was kind of his little protégé, I should say. So, and my sisters always as well, because I had sisters. My older sister, she's 62. Huh? So she kind of loved that little kid just arrived, you know. So yes, so it was
two
great.
Mothers.
Yeah. Yes.
Doesn't the way that Emmanuel says protégé sounds so much better than spoilt brat?
Protégé.
I mean, you're allowed to do what the others are not allowed to do. You know?
When you're the youngest.
That's right.
So you also had a family member. Was it your mother who was a great cook, Emmanuel?
Well, she was a great cook until I've learned how to cook and realized that she was not that good. No, she's I've got a, my mom was a good cook. She cooks with love, and sometimes she cooked because she had no choice with so many kids. But she was cooking very practical. You know, she was trying to make no wasted. So sometimes we had one dish with one piece of meat, and the next day that piece of meat was into something else. So we had lots of leftover turning into dish. So she was definitely a good cook. I mean, to cook for so many kids lunch and dinner. She was busy.
Interesting that you wanted to be a cartoonist, but ended up being a chef, and Alain is an artist as well. And I wondered...
I wanted to be a couturier, you know.
Oh, did you?
Well, later, you know.
Yeah.
Because my mom was sewing a lot, and by the time I was 18, I could make my own shirt, my own trousers, and everything, you know. I was pretty handy at it, you know. And,
I'm sure you are the perfect catch.
And, but later on, you know, when I see, how couturier were working and things like this, it's something, you know, I could have done. I like the feel of material, I like the sewing. I like to play with the models, you know. So it's so good.
I didn't know that.
but artistry and being a chef, I think, goes hand.
Oh, absolutely.
Doesn't it?
Well, it does. I mean, when I was a kid, the only things I was doing good at school his drawing, and that's about it. And I love his story as well. But I was so bad at school, my parents had to do something. And they said, what we're going to do with him? And my dad said, well, you know, I'm going to put him into a cookery. My uncle was a charcutier traiteur. And I said to my dad, oh, well, I want to be a cartoonist. He said, no, we're talking about the real work here. You know? But I said, I can go into a school and learn how to draw better. He said, you do this when you make your own money. Yeah. You need to learn how to, and then started like this. My uncle was same age as my dad, and but very gentle, and he knew I was here, not for choice. So he put me in a decoration part of the food, because he had a little catering company, so decorate the platter, like this, you know, early 80s we still were doing the platters and all of this, so I actually enjoyed. But I didn't want it to be a chef back then. I come back home and my dad said, so how was it? Okay. And he said, well, you're starting your apprenticeship next month. And that was it. I was thrown in the kitchen just like that.
Yeah. Well, both of you thrown in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah, that's right, you know. But the thing of art and cuisine, without a doubt, you know, we use a different medium than others. But my master was saying to me, you must look at the plate as a blank canvas. You know? And your art is very ephemeral in the sense that people will smell it, they will taste it, they will eat it. But you see how food can bury itself in your memory bank, you know. People, you know, they could talk to you and say, well, or they take to their wife and they say, you know, darling, you know, you remember that dinner we had in Spain, you know, that was 30 years ago in that little village. They don't remember the name of the village, but they remember the taste of the food. So it shows you, you know, how a smell, a taste, you know, can remind you of a place or a person as much as a perfume, you know.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. It's, as you were saying that, I was remembering, and now everybody's doing beef cheeks, but I remember the first time I had beef cheeks, which was at your place, at the Loose Box.
Good choice.
It was amazing, and I think you cooked it for 2 days in Cabernet Sauvignon, and I remember the mouth feel. I'm going to start dribbling, but the mouth feel of it was the most extraordinary feeling, because all of the connective tissue had just virtually dissolved, and it had given it wasn't fatty, it was just richness coating the inside of the mouth.
That's right. This is the collagen within the chic, you know, because chic is lean, you know, there is no fat inside of that, you know. However, because there is a lot of sinew and it is slow cooking, then you got the collagen who dissolve within and who give, you know, that moisture, that juiciness, you know, into the meat. And only slow cooking can do that with parts who have a lot of that sinew or that membrane inside of it, you know. But you know, those tastes. You know, when you talk about taste, if you eat a dish, very often you are going at the beginning to have all those flavors, you know, all those tastes. But then after a few mouthfuls, you are losing this. I mean, you're no longer tasting, you are eating. This is about your taste buds. What happens? Your taste buds are on a flat line. You start eating, they get excited, and you start tasting. However, after you've been eating a few mouthfuls, they go back onto another plane, higher, but another plane. You need to re-excite those taste buds to be able to taste the rest. This is why, you know, often when we make dishes, we sprinkle a bit of flour of salt. Because every time, you know, your taste buds, you know, we eat something or touch the salt or something with acid, it will re-excite your mouth and you will be able to taste anew, meaning that you will taste the whole dish instead of just the beginning and eat the rest. That's the difference also between the food for pleasure and the food for survival, who are two different philosophies, obviously, you know. Yeah.
Fleur de sel sounds so much better than flour of salt.
Oh, yes.
So, Emmanuel, tell us about coming to Australia for you. What was that experience like?
Coming to Australia was, I mean, I was working in Paris for many years, and my first apartment was a 9 square meter apartment.
9 square meters.
9 square meters, which means from the bed you're in the bathroom, and you get up, you're in the kitchen, and then you put the arm outside, and you are outside. So it was very challenging for me coming from the country. Then after a couple of years, I moved up into a palace, 25 square meters. It was a palace. I mean, that I was. But anyway, so I was working long hours, and I had at that time my girlfriend, which is now my wife. She's gone.
She hasn't gone. She's just left the room.
Then, we didn't see each other that much. My passion of cooking starts when I was 21. When I've realized, well, this is the only things I can do now. I must focus on what I know. And to actually get into society, I just decided to carry on. And I've met one of important chef in my career, which the first one was Jacques Loiset. He's right here. And working with him actually make me realize how wonderful our job is. And then from that moment, I just carry on until I've met Alain and give me another kick and realize, my God, I've got something in my hand and it will never go. I will never do anything else. So after Paris, I just said to my girlfriend, my wife, I said, well, why don't we actually take a year off? Because I've been working really hard and I've got no money. So let's try and see what we can do. So I wanted to go to Canada because I couldn't speak English. And to get a visa to go to Canada, you had to have 30,000 francs in your bank account. Well, I had not that much of money.
14.
So I was very depressed. So I've decided to take a week off. So I went down south to my uncle, which has got a great story. He's passed away now. But he was a firefighter with Royal Air Force in Second World War. And he met an Australian girl in England. Then they separate, life decided that way. They had a kid, but he stayed in France and she moved back to Australia. So when I went to see him in south of France, I said, I wanted to go to Canada and said, I don't know what to do now. He said, what are you going to do in Canada? Why don't you go to Australia? And I've looked at him and said, where? Australia. I said, well, I think that's a bit far. He said, you're only young. If you don't do this now, you'll never do it. I said, I've got my son there. I've still got a good relationship with him. I'll give him a ring, and he's going to find you a job. I said, okay. Well, I was actually...
What language do they speak there?
And then a week later, I had a phone call from his son. Said, I just spoke to my dad, and he asked me to find you a job. So the dad was really, he really wanted me to go there. 6 months later, I ended up in Australia, in Melbourne, 27 August 1996.
Oh, it's practically your anniversary.
Turak Road. I was in there. I said, is that Melbourne? Looks like a village, because we haven't seen the city. And then, anyway, so I had a job there, and I was... it was not a restaurant, the type of restaurant I was working in Paris. It was a really busy place. And I went there, and the guy who employed me told me that the chefs understand French, because I said, I don't speak English. No one was speaking French. No one.
Terrible.
Terrible. So I was just there, I said, so I spent 2 months peeling onion and potatoes until I actually blew up and said, and I threw my apron and said, that's it. I'm 27 years old, I can cook better than you. And then you're putting me on the onion and potatoes. So the boss came, the boss was French. And I went off with him. I said, you're just a disgusting person. You put me into that kitchen where nobody speaks French. I can't express myself, peeling onion and potatoes. He said, calm down. I said, I'm not here to take any chef's position. I'm here to do my job. This is not my job. So we had a chat through him, through the chef. And then from that moment, everyone in the kitchen helped me. So I was on a grill section, I remember. I had to cook so many different ways, the meat, medium rare, because I didn't know that, and I had stickers on my grill. And that place was not doing 50 cover, it was 250 people. I didn't last long because that's not the way I wanted. To me, cooking was not that. So I didn't stay that long. But anyway, it was really, really difficult. And my English was so bad. The only English I was speaking by then, it's rude word, which is they don't get you anywhere. So.
Well, in the same way that lots of us learned voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir.
But I've learned English through, I went to English school at night time. So you can imagine trying to speak English where you got 30 people where no one speaks English. So I was in front of an Indian person trying to have a discussion in English. That is not possible. That is technically not possible. So I was just slow. I said, I can't talk. Nobody understands each other there. But anyway, so it was a mess. So I decided to quit that school. And I said, I'm going to buy the paper. So I bought the paper. So turned the front page. And so I went on the page I actually would understand, which is sport. Everyone can understand sport. So I started like this, but in 1996, it was something on TV where everyone was talking about. It was Seinfeld.
Yes.
And everyone was laughing about the joke and all of this, and I said, well, I'm going to put myself in front of it. And I put myself in front of TV and trying to watch Seinfeld. First episode, didn't understand anything. Second episode, same. Third, same. Then my wife helped me a little bit. And soon as I actually got the joke, I could actually understand the way they were going, because Seinfeld, they choose one joke and they carry on for half an hour.
Yes, that's right.
So I had half an hour to actually understand the whole thing. And I've learned English by watching Seinfeld for many years.
That's great. That's great, isn't it? Interesting, Charlize Theron, that beautiful, beautiful actress, she taught herself to speak English because she's South African, she's Afrikaner, and she taught herself by watching American television. That's how she taught herself accents and English. So you and Charlize, like this.
It's one of the confrontation we all have when we come from another country. We don't speak the language. This is our first confrontation, obviously.
Did you have any English?
Not at all. I was saying yes to everything.
Hasn't changed. No, but that's interesting because Alain it wasn't your idea to come, it was somebody else's idea to come.
That's right,
and he left you at the train station.
But that was weird. Like Emmanuel, it was 1969. I was working in Versailles near Paris. It was raining. I was 20 years old. I wanted to see the world. And so I wanted to go to America because, America was the place, But, so I went to the American embassy to see what I could do. And they say, sure, you can come in America. First, you have to stop in Vietnam for 16 months.
Yeah, in 1969, don't think so.
No, 1969, it was not good, You didn't go fishing over there, So I said, no, I'm not going there. And then a guy who was working with me, he said, but chef, why don't you go to Australia? I said, Australia? I saw Skippy on TV a couple of times, I had no clue what the place. Well, what you learn at school, that the capital is not the biggest city in, a big continent and all that. And I said, I'm not sure. He says, it costs only $10. I said, I'm going. It was the time of the big migrations, you see, and they needed chefs. So that other guy also had made his paper, and both of us were supposed to leave. And we are in Paris. We already, after quite a few peripéties who happened before, but I'm at the train station waiting for that guy to arrive. That guy didn't turn up. The train is about to leave. And then I saw him arriving. I said, come on, quick. And the guy freezes. And he says, I'm not leaving. I cannot go. I cannot leave my country. I cannot leave my family. I said, what? You're 20 years old. You got nothing. You have nothing to lose. You got a ticket in your hand. You got a passport. And you don't want to go. What's the matter with you? He said, no, I don't want to go. And you shouldn't go. I said, bye-bye. And I left all by myself, And it's funny, on the ship, we were about 2,000 young people. I come on a big ship called the Australis. It was at the time of the big migration. It was a Greek line called the Chandler's Line.
Yes,
it was.
yes.
And the first stop in Australia was actually just right here, 50 meters from here, with the boat, And so we were about 2,000 young people. We were 27 French only, because the French people are not very good migrants. Were not very good migrants. Well, you don't leave a country when everything is right. Now they're leaving because everything is wrong. It's just, they've been trying to run a country for 40 years. It's not working. They're going backward. So that's why so many young French waiters and everything.
And there are lots.
Plenty.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to lose a generation over there, for sure. If you are 20 years old, and there is an unemployment, running 12%, and that's what they admit. So it has to be another 8 that they do not admit, you can see your chance of getting a job or to participate into a society is going to be pretty limited. You better look for new horizon, you know, and start thinking and moving in other places. So that's why, you know, many younger French people are coming here. But when I migrated, we were really a handful of people. To speak French, in Perth, there was a little cafe in Northbridge run by a Belgian woman. And we were all gathering over there, you know, trying to catch a bit of our culture, you know. But yes, indeed, my first job was at the Parmelia. And the menu, I couldn't read it. I didn't know. So they had to put number on front of the dishes. It was like a Chinese restaurant. So many number one, so many number two, and whatever, you know. But I remember the first job when I entered in a kitchen, you know, my eyes peel off, you know. I saw women in a kitchen. In France, I never saw women in a kitchen, never.
Not professional.
Not professional kitchen, you know. I mean, in classicism, it doesn't exist. And first thing I saw, you know, was girls in a kitchen, wearing mini dress and everything. I said, I'm going to cut all my fingers, you know, I think. It was, you know, it was fantastic, you know. I thought I fell in paradise. And it was. I fell in love with the country immediately.
Yes.
I knew I would have never go back.
Okay. What kept you here, though, Emmanuel?
What kept me here is when we arrived in Australia, we went straight away to, we lived 2 years in Melbourne, loved the city, but it was too European, which is my English needed more because we had lots of French friends. So, and the weather was not the way we were seeing Australia. So I spoke to a few Australian friends we had in Melbourne, and we said that we want to go to where we can see the real Australian, and said to us, why don't you go to the red? The red is WA. And they said, it's always sunny, it's a beautiful, blah, blah, but it's far. And then, so I talked to my wife, and she said, well, why not? And, but I needed to find a job there. So at that time, I was working in a pretty good little restaurant on Tourac Road. And I've met Philippe Mouchel. So I went to his office. He was on the way of opening his new restaurant, but now it was on the Collins Street. And he said, well, I'm looking for a pastry chef. I said, no, I want to go to Perth. I said, do you know any good place where I can actually work? And that was actually decisive, because if I didn't find the loose box, I probably would have gone straight to Darwin, go down, and then go home.
Yeah, okay.
That was the plan.
Okay.
So he said, oh, well, I know a restaurant there where he's looking for a pastry chef. And he called Alain straight away. So I spoke to Alain on the phone, and he said, well, when can you come? I said, well,
what time is it? I can come now.
Whenever. So Alain bought a plane ticket and fly me over for 3 days. And he asked me to do so many different desserts to show what I could do. I was really scared because of his MOF things on the jacket. So the pressure was on. And I loved it. I said, well, it's my time now to show off. And I did. Went back to Melbourne, bought a $1,000 Mitsubishi van, which we drive from Melbourne to Adelaide with a funny noise. And then I was just like, my wife, there is something wrong. We did twice fill up the engine with petrol. So we stopped in Adelaide. She went shopping in a shopping center. And then I was playing with the gears and realizing it was a number 5.
Oh.
So I was driving on number 4 all
All
the
the
time.
way across.
So the petrol was... Anyway, and then we arrived in Perth. I remember seeing Great Eastern Highway bypass, and then bluff, no power. But the car was gone. So we got a RRC to help us and this and that. And the next day I went to the loose box and saw Alain, and then started, I think, a couple of weeks later, I arrived in Perth. And the first things when I arrived in Perth, I went to see the Indian Ocean. And I said, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the way I was dreaming about Australia.
It is an extraordinary
Yes.
sight.
And then we never left.
No.
I mean, after you see parks and the sun and the people are different than Melbourne. Melbourne are very city people, you know, they're very nice, but they're different. Here they're very friendly. It was like a big, it's not a city, it wasn't a city, now it is a city. It was like a big village to me. And then we met lots of lovely people.
interesting, isn't it? The first, and where there are lots of us who didn't come from Perth, but when I first arrived, I was absolutely struck by everybody wearing shorts. And I thought, because I come from Sydney, and I mean, you'd be dressed, but there were shorts and thongs and casual reef walkers everywhere.
When I came here, it was the safari suit,
Oh.
the long socks and the pants in the socks and all that, you know.
I'm surprised you stayed.
And, you know, look at that, say, very colonial, really. That's how it was, you know.
Yeah, of course.
You know.
Thank goodness then something's changed. Tell us about, Alain, achieving the MOF, because it is one of the most extraordinary things to achieve. Also because you studied for yours here and then went back to France and got it.
That's right. So, the MOF, to explain, is not a competition, it's a concours. A concours means it is run by the national education, the national education, by the minister. And it is not a competition where there is winners and losers, because some years there is no MOF. So this competition happens every 4 years, and as a chef, like me, you would have to have mastered 18 disciplines. And you need to have an average of 18.5 out of 20 on your 18 discipline. That's why it's very complex, you know, and some years, there is no MOF. You see, Paul Bocuse came back twice. He done it in 61, he didn't get it, he went back in 64 and got it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that's even more interesting because he was head of the two different strands of really the future of French cooking when you were studying.
Absolutely.
Jean
Jean
Delavin.
Delavin. You see, France is divided in two schools of cuisine, really. There is a Parisian school and a Lyonnaise school. The Lyonnaise school, the master is Paul Bocuse, who is the leader. He's now 86. And the master of the Parisian cuisine was my master, Jean Delavin, who died in 98, you know. The both cuisines create disciples. Philippe Mouchel is a disciple of Paul Bocuse, as I'm a disciple of Jean Delavin. Now, this competition of the MOF, first you have to be selected to enter by people who are already MOF. You see, me, I've never competed in France. I left when I was 20, you see. So I never done any culinary competition. But here in Perth, I already had collected 68 gold medals. I had the Chef of the Year, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. I had, you know, I've done.
Twice best restaurant in Australia.
Yeah, that's right. You know, I had quite a strong background. And when my master came over to Perth, I asked him, well, I don't ask him, ask his wife. I said, Madame Delavin, do you know, do you think I could ask Mr. Delavin, you know, if I could enter the MOF competition? She said, yeah, sure, ask him. And I couldn't see myself, you know, there, because MOF is really at the top, you know, and so I didn't ask. And when I took her back at the airport, we were sitting next to each other. He said, so Alain, you got something to ask me? I said, well, yes.
She'd had pillow talk.
Yeah, well, of course. I said, yes, Mr. Delavin, I would like to enter the MOF, but I don't know my place in France in the competition and all that. I know what I'm worth here or on the East Coast or in Asia, but in France, I don't know. And he says to me, tell you what, you have exactly what it takes to be a MOF. He says you have the skill, you have the patience, you have the intellect, you have the knowledge. You have that. If you want, I can nominate you, you know, because you need godfather. So Jean Delavin was my first godfather, and Joël Robuchon was my second godfather.
Joël Robuchon.
Yeah. And
he's still my beating heart.
Well, and so in 1991, right at the beginning, I think in January or February, I went to France and I started training for this competition. I was training with Joël Robuchon at night, from 11 o'clock at night until 9 o'clock in the morning. At 9 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night, I was at the Patisserie Meilleur, you know, learning patisserie. And when I was in my small room, I couldn't sleep. I was just, my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, waiting for 11 o'clock to go back into the kitchen and make it happen. It's just at the end, you know, it's so intense that you're not even competing for you. You know, you carry the flag for the others, for your master and all that. You know, it's hard competition. I remember that when I finished the competition itself, you know, I was so empty. I didn't even remember my name. I was just flat. You know, I was bleeding from my teeth. I was losing my hair. It was a mess, and I won. Just imagine the one who didn't. You know,
yes, that's right.
you know. So the competition was done in 2 sections: semi-final and final. Now, I'm sorry. Now, you like to touch me, darling?
I can barely not touch you. Here we are.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm restricted.
You
It's
lose.
just going into your chest rather than into upwards. So you just need to, yeah, that way.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit further in, maybe here.
You think so?
Yeah.
Right.
I do. I don't know anything about cooking, but I do know about.
Ah, that's it. I got it.
There we are. Okay, that's better.
You know?
Yeah.
Where was I? Now that you disturb me. Competition, yes. Semi-final. And you see what happened is that the French people who had been selected already had passed the semi-final in November. That semi-final I passed was from French people coming from outside of France. Because you have to be French to be MOF, you know, or you have to be living in France 8 years or something.
Can you say the full title of it?
Meilleur Ouvrier de France, who means the best craftsman of France. See, France likes to gather the best people. And in 1923, we had the president who says, we always reward our best military people, our best intellectual people, but we do nothing for the artisan. We do nothing for the artist. We should select who is the best among us. So we have created a MOF for the jeweler, for the steel maker, for even clothes maker, even hairdresser. So because they say, you should be able, you know, to be proud, you know, and show your skills. Because they say, all society wants with their money is to buy the skills of the artisans. So the artisans should be and should be promoted, you know, recognized, you know. So they created this, and you know, when I passed my MOF in 1991, since 1923, only 91 chefs have been awarded the title of MOF. It's really limited thing. So the semi-final, it was interesting. I worked very hard on the training. We arrived in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning into a kitchen in Paris of a school. And we are 14 people coming from outside of France, some from Japan, from America, from all there. And they told us, you arrive in the morning, and they look at us and they say, gentlemen, you are 14, we need only 1. Oh. So, for sure, you know, you start very nice, you know, and I look the guys around me, you know, we're tying our apron, and I look and I say, this guy is hard, this guy is hard, this guy is hard, this guy. I look at it, I say, we are 3. You know, a winner shine. You can see someone who's going to win. You can see someone who's going to lose before the competition. If you study those people, you know, black mark under the eyes, all that is, they spend the night crying, or they're not sleeping, they're not sure, you know. When you go into that kind of competition, you have to be sure, you know, that's what you do. I remember in the middle of, I was sharing the stove actually in the semi-final with another chef, and we had to do very special thing, 3 dishes. And you have 5 hours to create them, but you have to do everything. And the first dish was a vol au vent of marinière mussels with quenelles and everything inside of it, but a vol au vent for 10 persons. So that means it's a vol au vent that high, you know, with all your things inside of it.
Oh, one vol au vent?
One vol au vent for 10 persons. So that means the maître d' has to cut it at the table.
Okay.
And you see what's important? It was to be able to take a bit of puff pastry, make it raise 30 centimeters. So it's light as a feather, you see? And so, very complex. I could make it go that high by putting 2 pieces, you know?
Yeah.
But then they say, Matt, you're not going nowhere with this, you know? You have to make it a 1. And then we reinvented the puff pastry. Totally. With Joël Robuchon, Jean de la Veine and all that. We recreated that we could make it hot. I mean...
How would you do it with hot butter?
No. Well, no. When we make the dough itself, the dough is hot.
But the dough, it has to, in puff pastry, the rule is it has to be chilled. The pastry, the flour has to be chilled, the butter has to be chilled.
The détrempe, which is the first part of the puff pastry, is made with hot water
and hot butter.
Then you rest overnight.
Ah.
It's very well. No, because you cannot rest overnight because you have only so many hours to do your competition. And that's what you have to calculate. You know, that you don't have time to say I'm going to refrigerate or whatever. You really have to get at it. You know. Anyhow, then the second dish was a chicken sauté bois vin. You have to know everything about it, the way to cut the nails, the way to make the tongue go like this and present the head. And I mean, you know, quite a complex stuff, you know, with many garnishes. And I remember I was full bore at it when the guy across to me said, Chef, is that so that the chicken sauté bois vin, it's a special cut? And I look at it and I say, man, if you don't know that, what are you doing here? You know? Yeah. I say, look, I've done 20,000 kilometers, you know, to win that competition. I'm not here to give lessons. Do me a favor, stand there and don't touch the equipment. Everything is regulated at the right temperature. Don't do nothing, you know. It's all good. And then, because the last dish was soufflé. Soufflé Elisabeth. I mean, big soufflé again for 10 people. 2 pieces of everything. 2 vol au vent, 2 chicken, 2 soufflé. And of course, a soufflé, mainly a big soufflé like this, you really have to work at it to know exactly temperature in the oven, to shift it, you know, to 180, 190, 198, you know, bring it down and all that. We had calculated all that with, this is how the training, you know, how precise it is. You work to the degree. Because you know those guys, the judge, when they get the soufflé, they take the soufflé and they're going to bang on it, and they're going to see how long it's going to take to come down, you know? Yes. So, you know, so the point of that competition really is to put you on the maximum physical and intellectual pressure to see who's going to come out of the sausage grinder on the other side, you know? And this is it, you know? And so I remember that soufflé. It's a big soufflé. Then on top of it, there is pan sugar. So you span the sugar, you make a big ball, and you see everything work with timing. And they will say, Fabregues, your soufflé in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes. And then after they count the minute and the second. And they say, bam, bam, your soufflé in 10 seconds and whatever. And I just finished my bowl and I put it on. That guy went and opened, it was freezing outside, snowing and all. He went and opened a window and I see the cold air, you know, touching the top of my soufflé. I just closed the window and those guys were calling and they say, you know, Fabregues, your soufflé, 5 seconds. And I just re-spun the sugar, put it on top, you know, and sand it. And the guy says, you're going to be late. I say, I'm taking the loss, you know, but I'm sanding my soufflé and it is right. And the fact is that I came out, you know, to the competition. Actually, they didn't take one, they took 2 guys, you know, a guy from Japan and me. And I remember then after the final was even more, well, the final is on 2 days. And remember that the French people have done already the semi-final 6 months before. Me, I done the semi-final on Friday and the final on Tuesday.
So you're exhausted.
So while everybody was practicing on a final, I had no reason to. I wasn't selected. I didn't have won yet the semi-final. So then as soon as I come back and I won, well, I was in the kitchen, you know, for 3 days, you know, full bore, you know, learning my thing. And it's just amazing. I remember you enter a room and they have lined up all young chefs, you know, and they say you must select 2 of them. So I grab one, I grab another one, I say, you guys come here, and I give them a pep talk. I say, you guys, you like winning? Yeah, you like winning? Yeah, so you better stick with me. I'm going to the toilet, I come back in 2 seconds, I want you here. I come back, those guys are not here. I say, what? I was just about to grab 2 other guys in another line, you know, when those guys arrived, and I could smell tobacco on them. I know they went outside and smoked. And I was peeved, you know, seriously. And I said, right, guys, you know, you want it or you don't, because if you don't, I'll take those 2 other guys. And, oh, chef, we're not going. So, and that was it, you know, we started doing the thing. But, you know, to do that competition, to be able to be right 5 hours after, the first things you had to do was to cook the dessert first. To be able to be ready then, you know. You know, if you lose 1 minute in the game, you're down. You know, I remember in the middle of a competition, a guy next to me burst in tears, you know. I hear, you know, the voice. I mean, a guy who is at least 50 years old, you know. See the competition, you are in the 40s, you know, 50s, you know, when you do. You need all that experience behind you, you know, to be up to it, you know. I hear that guy, you know, burst in tears. And we were 43 in the final. The only thing came to my mind, I say one less, only 42. and the fact is that if you're not ready to work on body to go on the other side, it's not yours, you know. You really have to dissociate yourself, you know, from everything with real, you know, to get there, you know.
And Emmanuel, you want to do this?
He wants to do that.
You want to put yourself through this pain?
Yeah. I mean, when I was working with Alain, we spoke about it. And back then I said, and he said to me, no, you're too young now, but when you're ready, you just come and talk to me. And talk to him.
Because I got this, you know, Godfather lined up and everything, you know, to do that. I can have Michel Roux, you know, for the patisserie.
Yes.
I can have Joël or others, you know.
Yeah, perfect.
Because I know all those guys. You know.
I wish you well.
Well, it is an individual thing, you know. It's something I always was in my head, and I know I'm not ready right now, but I know if I put my effort together, I'll be able to achieve it because I really want it.
You really want it, then it's within grasp.
Well, this is the only way. That kind of things, nobody give it to you. You have to take it, you know.
Yeah.
This is the only way you can control it, you know.
Do you find, I mean, in some ways for me that feels like quite a French attitude, if you like, or even an American one. You know, there's very much there, let's go for it. I don't think that that's necessarily an Australian sort of attitude. Do you find that Australians might, I don't know,
well,
interested in your observations?
Let's say our society is changing, you know, we're getting much softer than we were like when I arrived 43 years ago, you know. We had a strong culture as Australian people. Now our culture is Americanized, you know, very, very much, you know. I mean, our identity has been diluted in some ways. So I thought, you know, that as a nation, we were closer and stronger, you know, 40 years ago, because we had the style. But at the same time, globalization didn't exist, you know. We had to eat all our lobster, you know.
What do you mean? You do eat all your lobster?
Well,
because nobody would order it?
No, because we didn't export.
Ah, yes, I see.
And so because we didn't export, you know, every Sunday we were eating big prawns and lobster and all that because it was there and it was the same price as a steak, you know.
Yeah.
So that was a part of our diet, you know.
Yeah.
But as soon as we started exporting, that was the end of the day.
What do you see as the differences, Emmanuel, between French culture and your adopted home here?
Well, it was when I first arrived in Perth. It was actually because Melbourne is very Europeanized and it's really open to lots of style of food. So we could find a French delicatessen. We could find things we used to eat in France, in Melbourne. But when I came to Perth, it was a totally different story.
Yeah, but that's the difference between Melbourne was very cosmopolitan.
That's correct.
While Western Australia was still very Anglo-Saxon.
That's
no?
correct, yeah. So
And this was still the colonies, you know. Right?
Yeah, very
I mean,
much so.
Perth has changed. I mean, since I arrived, it's just growing every time. Now, you can't find anything now. But when we first arrived, it was when we were going to supermarket and even the milk bar, there were no existing in Melbourne anymore. It was a 7-Eleven. And here in Perth was a milk bar, and you get in there just like, what is this place? You know?
Yeah.
So we used to go to, of course, my wife used to go to shop, and my wife, she's a yogurt lover. So for the first 2 years in Perth, she was really struggling because she couldn't find the right yogurt. Now you can buy a different type of yogurt because now there is people who make lovely yogurt here in the WA.
Yes.
But back then it wasn't the case.
And I wonder, given that, I mean, you eventually opened Choux, the most wonderful patisserie in Swanbourne, and the flour seemed to me to be the issue prior to that time, that you just couldn't get the right flour.
It was because I'm not a baker, but I wanted to do the baguette at Choux. So what I did is I got a French baker coming to Australia to work in my kitchen, and we had the flour from different places, but the result was always up and down. So I just said, well, why don't I buy the flour from France and get it into Perth? It was too long, the flour got damaged on the boat, and the result was not close as a French baguette, if you know what I mean. It was good, but for me, nothing to do with a French baguette. No worth it to get someone to make it. And I know there is not many people can make the right baguette here in Perth.
It's true. It's absolutely
it
true.
It is.
The thing of the flour, you know, it's we take things out of the flour. We remove the gluten, we remove the protein, and we sell it to you individually separately.
Yeah.
You know, is and that's what happened. I mean, if you leave the flour whole, you know, you'll have better chance, you know, to have everything inside of it. Instead of that, they take the flour, they remove the product, and to make the bread, you have to put it back inside of it, you know. And so this make it, you know, that there is a dislocation within the supply, and sometimes you can have some flour made, you know, with durum hard wheat, you know, and some with soft wheat or medium wheat. The result is totally different. See, in France, the advantage, well, I mean, it's the country of bread, you know, we all eat bread.
And it is the best bread.
But you see, that if you want to open a bakery in Paris, you will have to buy your flour from the big mill, you know. Now, those people, they have consultants who will come into your place. They will check all the bacteria there is into it, you know, if they are convivial to the bread and all that, check all the temperatures, everything. And they say, okay, for your environment, to make centenaire bread or a plain bread or a Polish or whatever, you have to use, you know, those flour, you see. And otherwise, making bread is a very noble art. But in all its simplicity, there is quite a few complications. You know, there is, for example, the rule of 69 for the bread. It's a silly thing, but it means that the temperature of the environment, the temperature of the flour, and the temperature of the water will have an equal of 69 degrees. For example, you know, and the only thing you can change temperature-wise is the water. Yeah. So if your room is at 10 degrees and your flour is at 15 degrees, that's 25 degrees, the temperature water would have to be the difference between 69 and that, you know. And you will have then, but many rules, you know, and regulations and whatever. But we're doing a lot of progress in bread, you know, Jean-Pierre Sancho.
Yeah, the best bread. Making loaf and all of this and big bread, it's easy. You can make this anywhere. But what I found after I sacked that guy, because I said, you can't do it, he couldn't think. I had to actually think like a baker, which is, I had to get through books to understand and know how to make bread too. And that was his job to do that, but he didn't do it. And I realized the last months that the issue was not only the flour, was the quality of the water. Because all that time he was using tap water.
With too much chlorine in it.
That's correct. Yeah. And the last time he made a dough, he had bottled water. And I was changing the thing. Yeah. But back then, I've already made my decision. I said, anyway, I can't keep on going on that because I was losing money, time, and I mean, I haven't seen when I had that baker in my kitchen, I'd hardly see my wife for weeks because I was working, doing cakes and working during the day with that guy to trying to get some bread happening. So I just said, well, you know what? I'm not a baker, and I'm not going to go in there. I'm just going to do what I do and do the best.
You can do it. You can do it all. You know, you have to select, you know, some field where you are going to excel. You know, but you can't carry the whole thing. You know?
You both regularly, even though this is home, you both regularly go back to France, don't you? And is there no pull? Do you not get there and think, oh, I don't know, here people understand food, I understand, I mean,
home is Australia. You know?
It is.
Yeah, I'm one of us. You know?
It is indeed. It is.
You know, I love to go back to my country. You know, I'm going back in October to do mushroom gathering with my brother, or I will go back in March for my mom's birthday. But hey, I want to live in Australia. I don't like, you know, all those graffitis everywhere, all those beggars, all that mess, you know, all that social discords and all that, you know, it's crowded. If I was to live in France, you know, I would live in the countryside. The countryside is absolutely beautiful with our little chateaus and rivers and all that. It's just fantastic. I mean, imagine France got 70 million people, and they got 70 million tourists a year.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, you know, so and as long as this happened, they all got a job. Well, some. But you know, things are changing. And yeah, France is not like before. You know, when I migrated, I came by ship. It took 6 weeks. Now France is only 19 hours away.
That's it.
You know, you can just catch a fly and you're there in no time. I mean, and the distance are shrinking, you know, more and more. So it's not. Before when you were migrating, you migrated for life, you know, I mean, forever.
Yeah, that's right. As your mother, I can feel your mother weeping.
Oh. Yes, that was tough, you know.
Yeah.
Mom, I'm leaving to Australia. What?
Yeah. And it would be tough on your families. I mean, one of 8 children as well, let alone the difficulty when your father died as well. So that's tough.
And plus, you know, in 1969, you know, when, well, I came here, I arrived just in March, 18th of March 1970, you know, I landed here. But when I went and see my parents and I said, I'm going to Australia, they didn't believe it, huh?
No.
They didn't believe it until I showed them the passport and the visa. They never believe it.
Yeah.
And then when I saw that was for real, I mean, Mom was just falling apart, you know. I said, you know, it's time to go, you know, I mean, I can't stay here forever, you know.
Yeah. That's right, I'm 20.
That's it.
I'm a lustful young man. I wonder, given the experiences that you've both had in your life, you've both moved continents, and not just different places geographically, emotionally, intellectually, completely different worlds. Mm-hmm. Perhaps not on your deathbed, but you're looking back at your life and you're thinking, what advice, what would I say to my children as something that's very important to them about my life that I want to share with them? What collective wisdom do you think you have that you would like to share?
Well, I think it's important, you know, to explain to them, it doesn't matter where you begin. What matters is where you are going to end up with, you know. Like, you know, when I started my apprenticeship, I was just 15 years old. I would have never dreamed to come to Australia. I would have never dreamed to become MOF or to add some knighthoods.
Two knighthoods. Knighthoods.
And I would have never dreamed all that because, but when I look back, you talk about look back, I can look back at my life and I say, well, with the card I had, I did pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, the best advice you can say says, hey, life is a big book. It's a great story. Every day you turn a new page. It doesn't matter that you are here today. What matters is where are you going to end up with what you have today in your hand. And that is the future. None of us can predict. Every intersection is a crossroad. And if you go this way or this way, you will have different life, you know. And I mean, I could have stayed in France or I could have gone to America. And it would have been different. Maybe I would have become something else, you know. I mean, I just got no idea. And that's it. I think, you know, important to say to our children, it will be, in this world, you can have anything you want. But nobody owes you nothing. And if you want it, go and get it.
Okay.
That's exactly what I said to my son. He's 10 years old. And I said, you know, no matter what happened in life, nobody's going to give it to you. You want it. You have to do it. You have to work for it. I mean, I remember when I was 15, my father found me that apprenticeship, but it was 25 kilometers away from my house. So the only locomotion I had is a bike, push bike. So, you know, when you're starting early and finish late, and then he was in, comment on dit les marais déjà?
In wetland, you know.
In the wetland.
So at night there is mist everywhere. You know,
I fall a few times in the water. And then I'll sit down on the table. I remember sitting down with my dad. I said, you put me there, but I need a little Muppet. And he said, you want a Muppet?
Moped, yeah.
Yeah, he said, you want a Muppet? I said, yeah, with my eyes like this. He said, work for it and buy it for yourself. Oh, can I have a bit of help somewhere? And he said, no, this is no life. Life, you have to earn money. And that's why you're doing this job, to make something in life. And you have to understand what you have to do. So I was really not happy with him back then. But I worked really hard, and I bought a second-hand one, which is, I remember the thing, it was just like this, and I was like, and then the light was flashing as you were riding.
You haven't had a good history with automobile things, have you?
No, not very good. No, I had a few accidents. And then after a year of my apprenticeship, I bought myself a new one. So I saved money and bought myself a new one, which is like, you know, was excellent. And my dad looked at me and said, you see, you've done it.
Yeah.
You see, if you give, you know, some challenge, you know, at the beginning, I think, you know, the hand is easier. You see, here in Australia, I mean, I'm guilty as, you know, we put our children in a cocoon, you know. We want to protect them against everything. But hey, life is a fight. It's not a smooth ride, you know.
No.
You have to learn to stand up, and more we help them, weaker they get. And so, of course, you know, you want to help, but at the same time, you don't want to damage them, you know, that they can stand for themselves and they can fight and learn how to say no. And
is Natalie a fighter? your daughter?
Oh yeah, she will get that from me, you know. I'm sure, And from her mom also.
You know, I remember when I said to my parents, I'm going to Australia. My dad looked at me and said, what are you going so far? I said, you know, you brought me that way. You pushed me away, you know. Because after my apprenticeship, I finished my apprenticeship. He already signed up and found me a job in Spain to one of his friends. Oh. So I went to Spain for a year. Okay. There, and I really didn't want it to I wanted to sit down and see what I could actually do from there. But he's already got all those things lined up. So my mom took me to the train station, and on my way go to Spain, arrived there, no Spanish school, Spanish speaking. And I was only 18. I had my first flat, and everything changed from that moment. I just realized that it's so cool not to be with parents. And then I never returned. When I went back a year after, went back home, and my life was, I was a man. Then things went on and on after that. But when I decided to go to Australia, my dad said, you can't go that far. I said, well, you raised me that way. Now I've made my choice to go far to see what's happening. And the first thing he did, he put his head on my shoulder and cried. And I said, I'll return. So we went back for a year, came back to get married with my wife. And we said, we're only going for a year for honeymoon, and then we'll be back.
Famous last
Never
words.
return.
Yeah, I said that to my mom 43 years ago.
Emmanuel has a new book, by the way, coming out next month, 2 weeks.
Yeah, 23rd of September will be released.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What's it, and what is
It's
this
called Patisserie, and it's about pastry, of course. It's the level up from my first book called Et Voilà. So it's a good book for real pastry amateur, and also for young professional. So it's really touching a wide public there. It's called Patisserie.
Patisserie, look out for it. And this is Alain's book, which is, how do you say degustation?
Degustation.
Degustation. It's part...
Your French is improving since you know me, I reckon, you know.
Of course, it needs to. It's part biography, autobiography, and part recipes too. And does include the wonderful story about the beginning of truffles here in Western Australia. And you might, with the wonderful Dr. Nick Malachek, who made the truffle industry happen, but it was Alain who was the instigator of the Mundaring Truffle Festival, which of course had been going for 7 years. I think we've had 1 year break, perhaps next year it'll start again. And people say, oh, I don't know what truffle tastes like. Well, we didn't grow up with it. How would we know? But now, so many people know, and now we've got the shot in the arm. We're addicts.
No? That's right.
But I want to just read a little bit from Alain's book to give you a flavour of how he actually writes like he speaks. But you may be able to take the Frenchman out of France, but you can never take that flirt out of the Frenchman. and this is, I think, this moment which says so much to me about Alain. Less so about Emmanuel, I think, but maybe that's because Godin is in the room. Anyway, he's in the restaurant. It's not a flash restaurant, but this is the one that's initially going to be where he's doing his apprenticeship. The most important thing is that the food is good, and he's already walked in, identified the smells. Anyway, one of the waitresses was looking over the bar, making sure no customers could see her, and adjusting a stocking. To us, however, everything was in full view. I was transfixed. Her fingers tugged the stocking at the top of her long leg, holding the edge, clipping it to the buckle of her suspender. She checked both legs carefully to make certain the seams were straight. And then she lifted her skirt up. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and for years I carried this image with me. Long legs poised on high heels, black knickers, black suspenders, and sheer black stockings held high and taut like the strings of a violin, while in between the soft white satin of her skin, I felt hot and fuzzy, and time must have stopped for a couple of minutes. She briskly adjusted some black undergarment before tugging down her navy blue skirt and fixing her crispy white apron, making a perfect bow, her hands fussing at her back, feeling the material and puffing the curve of the loop. When she finished, she turned around and faced us. I must have been as red as a tomato. I didn't know where to look. And what she said, "You boys having a good time?" And she said, now that you know my legs, let me introduce you to me. I'm Eliane. And I love that because at that moment he was definitely going to be staying in that kitchen. No matter how cold and how many times they had to warm. Funny, you should talk about the wetlands because they had to warm their bums to get there. It was so cold. They'd get their trousers close down probably and into the oven to warm their bums when they first got into the kitchen.
Winter, you see, you arrive, you know, there's snow and ice everywhere, and I have to ride myself 18 kilometers on my moped. You arrive totally frozen. And that was the first thing, you know, we opening the door of the oven and we were there, you know, so,
It's funny, you know Nick Niederberger from the Pearl of Highgate?
Yeah.
A lovely, lovely man, Swiss. But I said to him one day, why did you become a chef? And he said, it's too cold in Switzerland. The kitchen was warm. That's why.
That's right.
So ladies and gentlemen, there are about 1 billion more things that I could talk about here. But we're going to open it up to you now. If you would like to ask some more questions. Just before you do that, I wonder if you put your hands together for these wonderful men. And could I say, the things that you have talked about in both of your experiences, for me, embody the essence of the migrant spirit, which is that I think migrants work harder to make it work for them here. You're already behind the 8 ball because of the difficulty in language, and Australians don't speak English, contrary to public belief. We speak Australian, which is a completely different language.
Nine.
I mean,
That's what my son says. When you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
That's true. And we have, as Philip Adams, what did he call them? A bunch of idioms or bloody idioms or something. Because bring a plate doesn't mean bring a plate, of course. And when somebody calls you a good onion, it's a good thing, but how would you know? All of those sort of expressions too. And yet both of you have worked so hard, established businesses, families, and now you're giving back through your books, through your education, through TV, through so much, through the apprentices.
But you know, out of all that, what I'm the proudest of all is I formed 104 apprentices.
And I'm proud that they survived you, because I've seen you in full flight.
Yeah, that's what, you know, if you survive with me 4 years, you survive anywhere, you know.
That's true. 104.
104, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, not all of them stay in the industry, but at least, you know, 50% of them, and are in top places.
Yeah.
I got a guy from Mundaring, he's the chef of Daniel in New York, you know. Well, I got one who was second chef with Michel Roux. I got some in Tokyo. I got some all over, you know, in France, all over the joint.
Yeah.
And it's good. And they're Western Australian guys, you know, and girls.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. And that's giving back to the next generation. It's so important.
Well, if that's what we do, you know, I mean, we bring skills and we teach it to others, you know. And, you know, if everybody in the industry has taken the job of training seriously, like I did, you know, we will have plenty of chefs. You know, there will not be that penury that we are always struggling. You know.
You must hate MasterChef.
Yeah. Well, I'm a real master chef from France with medals and all that, you know, but not the TV guys. You know? You see, because to be a chef, you know, is to learn techniques who are going to give birth to hundreds of dishes. It's not learning how to do a dish. I can take anybody and teach you how to do a dish, and you be master chef like that. But this is not what it is about, you know. It's like learning to read music. You can play any instrument, you can make it happen, you know. But if you just play by ear, you will have your limitation, you see.
Of course. Have either of you ever had a food failure?
Food failure?
Yeah. Oh, obviously not.
I mean, I've never lost a customer, you know, and I haven't killed anybody, or they die in a car park and I don't know about it, you know.
Yes, I had an accident once.
What was it?
I was in Melbourne, and I was working in a kitchen. there was a wedding cake in a cool room, 3 tiers. And I was going and grab a bottle of milk, and as I go, the bottle went straight in the cake, down. So I'm just there looking at the cake. Close the door of the cool room and look at the chef, and just like, okay, I have to tell him, do I? So when I said, okay, with my broken English, come with me. I opened the room and said, it was just like, oh my God, the cake was coming from a company.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
And he just swore so much. I understand the swearing. And he looked at me, he said, oh, I said, I can't fix it. I'm a pastry chef. I'll fix it. And he looked at me, he said, no, no. I said, yes.
Oui.
So I actually took off the bottle. I put the cakes. It was, you know, the cake with icing and heavy cake. So it was not that dramatic. So I put it out and I look at it and say, okay, right, I'm going to fix it, but it's not going to look the same. And the wedding was at night.
Oh.
So I put myself together, fix up the cake. It looked completely different. Completely. So, but it looked good. It looks good. So I fixed it up all afternoon. I spent on the
heavy
fixing.
white icing?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
So
the royal
it
icing.
was fixable, but anyway. And I remember the mom came to have a look at the cake, and she looked and said, "Where is our cake?" And I couldn't explain to her, obviously, but the chef was very embarrassing, so he explained to her. But the cake looks really nice. So I went to, because I couldn't do any flour, so I went to buy some flour to replace the flour. So the cake looks stunning. We got some ribbon, fixed the inside, re-icing the outside, had a different two colors, so it was totally white, but he ended up having ivory color, and it was really beautiful. I've made something really nice. And she's like, Anna, oh, okay, that's fine. The groom and the bride didn't actually make the difference. Only the mom knew it.
They didn't notice.
So it was okay. So from that moment, the things changed for me in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I just realized I had skills.
Yes, that's right. Yes, you did. That's a brilliant moment. Do we have questions from the floor? Yes, Nunya.
I'd like to ask if there's any impact from your life in Australia on your cooking.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, on your...
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. As in cuisine, you see, the environment, the ingredients, and the customer are actually directional. You see, when you arrive in a new country, you're not here to impose your culture, but you try to merge what you know, with what you visit, It was no point, in the 1970 when I arrived here, to try to make people having a beef Wellington rare, for example, or that kind of
Send it
things.
back, it's uncooked.
Well, yeah, that's right. It was well done, stuffed, three-veg, But the best place to me, in 1970 in Western Australia was to go to a steakhouse because you were in charge of your food. I mean, you enter a place, there is big grills in the middle, salads refrigerated on the side, and you could help yourself, and you grill your steak. Like this, if you want the rare or blue or whatever, you do your trip, But those things have disappeared. I thought that was fantastic, and that was, this didn't exist in Europe. How they call that? When you go and see the cinema outside in a car?
Driving.
The driving.
Yes.
I thought that was such a fantastic idea, the driving. For $1, you could have 2 movies, your girlfriends, and a steak. I thought it was paradise,
It's gorgeous.
No.
Oh, no. No.
You have to be born here for that.
But I've made something, I've made a deal with my kids. Well, it doesn't work with my daughter now because she's having a piece of bread, butter, and Vegemite every morning, which is, I have to do it. And just opening that thing, it's just horrible. But my oldest son, Zlatan, I remember when he was younger, he wanted Vegemite and butter all the time. And I said, you know what? Have you tried a croissant? No, I don't like French things. you French, not me. So I said, well, I'm just going to cut a croissant. And I cut a croissant, put some butter and Vegemite, and he used to have this at Choux Café.
Okay.
And I used to bring this after I picked them up from school, a croissant with Vegemite.
All right. It's a compromise, isn't it?
It's a compromise.
See, we never understood, well, me personally, like
No,
Emmanuel, Vegemite, it doesn't make sense to us,
Yes.
I mean...
It's all, yeah.
They're making a movie about the guy
Yeah,
now. The
who
guy was
invented
doing.
it.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how he come up with that idea.
It's a waste product. That's the
exactly.
thing.
You know, I mean, you know.
And that's one of the things, so that the French do so well, is that they use every part of an animal. I mean, it's the only place that I had duck heart, duck liver
Oh, yeah.
on a plate. It was fantastic en brioche, but you never have duck heart here. And yet,
Oh, no. Here, all the offals are off limit. You know, you cannot buy sweet bread, you cannot buy bread, you can buy so many things. Blood, if you want to make black pudding, it's very hard, you know, to get it. You know,
and yet lamb's heart is such a beautiful texture. It's so dense and rich and stunning.
Look, calf liver in France is the most expensive piece that you can buy. It's maybe 45 euro a kilo. Here, $6, nobody wants it.
That's right. That's right.
You know, it's just because of our tradition and the way we eat and what we prefer. See, the pig in France, they say the only thing we lose of the pig is the scream of the pig when we kill him. You know, with the hair we make brush, with the skin we make gloves, we black pudding with the bloods, we eat all the inside, all the outside.
With the ears,
You know,
everything.
the ears, the nose. In France, you know, 2 legs, 4 legs, no legs, we eat a lot, you know.
But it's wonderful. I wish we did more. I wish we did more of that,
Bah.
really. Yeah. Except when I had a plate of ears at a Chinese restaurant the other night.
Yeah.
That's all. It just came as ears.
You had to
Yeah, that's it. A whole
Yeah.
plate of them. She said, "Really, you want this?" And I went, "Yeah,
See-
thinking that I've eaten trotters."
speak a bit louder, it doesn't hear.
Do we have any questions? Yes.
When you're traveling in France, you can stop and buy beautiful sandwiches with baguettes, mainly baguettes sliced down. Beautiful. But what is the technical reason why you can have cheese or ham and nothing else? You can't have different fillings.
Well, look, you know, you can have pâté, rillettes, jambon. I mean, you know, you select. You know, the best way to have your baguette is that go into the shop, buy a baguette, go into another charcuterie, buy your stuff. Look, the best way to eat in France, we call it saucissonné. I mean, you go on a bank in a nice park, open your bottle of wine, you know, have your pâté, your cheese, your baguette, do your trip, you know. And, but cheese and ham,
Well,
I don't know.
I think some French sandwiches are very simple. They are based on a choice of 1, 2 ingredient maximum.
Yeah.
Because this is what you need in a sandwich. For example, as Alain's talking about pâté. Well, a pâté sandwich for me is a piece of bread, mustard, the pâté, gherkins. No lettuce, no nothing else.
The cornichon.
That's all it needs. Because the product itself is already rich, it's already there. You don't need to add extra. And extra. It's the same with a nice piece of cheese and a beautiful slice of ham. Well, what else does he need more? Nothing else.
I saw in France lately that even in a baguette now, they can put some chips and a sausage, you know. So
That's because we left France too early.
that place is out of control.
We must go back.
But it is interesting. It's an American thing, isn't it? It's value adding all the time. Add something more. Add
It's
something
always
more. Add something
it's
more.
almost like you gotta hide something to put another. And at the end, where is the interest of the sandwiches when it's that big?
Yeah, yeah.
But
even hear it.
I remember when there was a butcher here in Perth who, for Christmas, he was doing the thing, you know, that they put a quail inside of a pigeon, the pigeon inside of
The quartets.
something bigger and whatever, and then at the
7
end,
birds, I think. it
yeah,
was.
and at the end, a turkey. Well, can you imagine, you know, how dry the turkey is going to be outside for that quail to be cooked in the middle? You have to think of the whole thing, you know. I mean, but I remember the first time I was invited to an Australian house, and they had cooked a turkey, you know. And I mean, to us, when we roast. The point of roasting is a brisk oven. But of course, no miracle happen. You have to be there, you have to baste it, you have to stir it, you have to do things. You just don't put the thing as low as possible and you come back 6 hours after. And voila, you open the door, he's as white as when he came in, but he hasn't roasted, it's just dry, you know. And there's a big difference between drying meat, you know, and roasting meat, you know. So if you guys are roasting, remember, fire, brisk. Roasting is about hot.
And isn't that interesting? And I don't know your relationship here at all, but it's interesting that Guillaume over at the Crown, his signature dish is just roast chicken. Perfect ingredient.
Sure.
You know, good, beautiful produce. It's free range. It's roasted chicken. That's it. But crisp outside, succulent inside.
And
Simplicity.
Well, I don't know if you see
Simplicity, absolutely.
in France, you know, there is one thing in Australia we could do much better, and that is our poultry. You know, we are way ahead in our fish, in our meat and all that, you know, but poultry, we are way beyond, you know, what's happening in Europe. For example, you know, in the choice of breed, you know, it's very, it's the same, you know.
Well, there is no choice.
Well, there is no choice. It's like the ducks, you know, you got no choice, you know. You got those lover duck or Peking duck, that's it. Well, there is at least 20 types of duck, you know, that you be able, you know, to eat, you know. Same with the chicken. You see, in France, you can buy a chicken, you know, for $5 a chicken, up to $50 a chicken. It depends, you know, what kind of involvement you want. But if you want, you know, a red label chicken, guaranteed by the government, so that means you will buy a license with so many numbers, and they come and they go with, well, I guess now they will use drone, you know, to do that. They go over the thing, and they electronically count, you know. You have one chicken too many, you lose your license. A license could be $500,000, you know.
Wow.
Oh, it's very controlled. I mean, the customer is respected. I mean, if you pay top dollar for a real free-range chicken, you do. Here, a problem in Australia, we have free-range chicken, but we don't have a legislation to tell us what's supposed to be a free-range chicken. Sometimes the only thing with free-range is the plastic bag it comes in, you know. You know, and really, we should have a legislation who say, to obtain a free-range chicken, it has to be so many chicken in so much land with so much food and whatever. You know?
Yeah. The Bresse chickens.
Chicken de Bresse or the Houdin or others, you know. And different breed. Some good are poached, some good fried, some good roast.
Yes.
You see, a chicken doesn't do everything, you know.
That's right, the one size fits all. No, but it is important. And the other thing in France, the chickens are golden. They're always yellow.
No white.
Well, it depends. If you have the poulet de Bresse, it is white. If you have the poulet de Landes, it's yellow because up there they eat wheat. In our province, they eat corn. Okay. The breed is different. They got yellow pet, yellow legs, and yellow beak. On the other side, they got white with a bit of darkness inside.
Even the chicken in my country, they eat guémon.
Ah, yeah, that's right, yeah.
So they're different.
Algae and different flavor according to different province.
I just remembered something else about your area, Emmanuel. Even though you were born in the Loire Valley, you went to Vendée as a child. What was the story about the Vendée?
People from Vendée, you know, they call ventre à choux. Ventre à choux, you mean stomach full of cabbage. They eat cabbage, you know, in the province all the time, you know. See, at the time of the revolution, East Province, you know, the Vendée were the only one with the king. So that means when Napoleon went, he kicked the head out of all those guys, you know. I mean, he's one of them left, you know, but not many. You know,
True fighter.
The choux is
Les
cabbage.
chouans.
Les chouans.
Les chouans.
Chouans, very good. You see, you know your French history.
Les
Excellent.
Only
choux.
food.
Les choux.
Only food, and will you sleep with me tonight?
You know, and those people, they call the chouan.
That was actually the French thing. That wasn't
And
actually an
and-
asking question of Alain.
My mom was doing the choux perfectly well, very, very, many different ways. And I've married a woman, she's a Croatian from origin, and also the vegetable is the cabbage.
So that's like salma.
She's
Salma,
there,
the
she's
cabbage
there.
rolls.
Yes.
Oh,
Cabbage
love.
is a great vegetable.
Yeah.
You know, with a bit
beautiful
of orange peel and orange juice, a bit of butter, a bit of salt and pepper. Just cook
Stop
slowly,
it.
you know,
Yeah,
just
beautiful.
a little bit cringe.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice. The majority of people, you know, sometimes overcook vegetable. Keep them a bit under. Huh?
Yeah. Not raw, just
cooked.
Under.
Gentlemen, you've been wonderful. Thank you both so much for
Thank you.
joining us here today.
Thank you.